One of the biggest things affecting our current world in the minds of the masses to the manifestation of the events that is happening and affecting more minds of the masses and allowing the competent minds to take hold of the incompetent, embracing that ego and sense of oppression, uh, and allowing further control is this sense of insecurity. So, a lot of people in today's world have insecurities in different forms. And we all have our different insecurities, may you see, to different degrees because we have some sort of fear that goes alongside. You may associate insecurities with levels of fear. Some fear that is natural, others that is rather propagated and pushed to the extreme ends. Because sometimes fear is not always a good thing. Sometimes fear is a good thing, but most of the time, if we're in fear, it's not a good thing. In fact, we should be the exact opposite most of the time, and have a good, confident mind on our shoulders that we can take on the world. But when we're constantly being stressed and our hormones are in fight and flight mode, then it might make it pretty difficult to be fearless. Okay. And so what we have is constant go, 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 and oh no, something happens, and I need to head back to my shell like a turtle, and I need to mask myself with this shell so this shell can protect me from all that is elsewhere. I'm not gonna see the light of day again. I'm just gonna stay in my turtle shell where it's safe, so I can be secure. But while that is an example of a real form of security, actually, and as a turtle would, human beings use a lot of false forms of security to mask their insecurities. Okay, rather than being upfront with their insecurities and admitting to it and trying to face it head on, as we do and shall with bravery and courage among our fears, so we can emerge out of it. With insecurities, we are giving ourselves fake senses of security to try to mask it. So what do I mean by that? I mean, well, oftentimes what we see is with appearance in particular. Everybody is worried about how they're coming across to other people because we live in a very social world, because there's plenty of people and plenty of technology, plenty of things to share. That's why we call it social media. Okay, and real social networking is talking with people, although some people might say that's also social media, which isn't so social after all, because you're talking through a screen, and that screen is representing you, and it's not fully you, and that could also be a form of expressing insecurity. But you see that there's many layers to this, right? We're looking at the social fabric of society, which we know is one of the most powerful, impactful fabrics of society that affects everything else. Basically, what's social is also cultural, and that's what makes up the world, essentially. If you can change the social or cultural habits of people, you can change the world naturally. And when you change the language, you're essentially doing the same thing as well, right? When you change the way people look, you might change people's opinions of others, and you also have a lot of different cultures mixing together in today's world with multiculturalism. So you have a bunch of different factors going on here, and this all contributes to different forms of insecurity, or being in a place where you feel like I'm not in the right place, or that you're in a place where there's some unsureness, right? Where there's a lack of holding on to something, right? Like, think about security. It means holding on to something, right? So think when you're in a car and you have to hold that, that handle so you can feel a little bit safer, or holding on to your child so you can, try to keep him safer, or holding on to things. And we tend to often hold on to things a lot. Whether it be physical or mental or spiritual, whatever you want to look at it. It could be any one of those three, by the way. That can be also a form of the insecurity expressed in different ways. And you can see it in people's behaviors and the way they present themselves as well. It's not just an appearance, because appearance is just a manifestation, an external expression of often internal feelings. So that's why you have to get deeper down to the root when you're dealing with these issues. Okay, so you color your hair. Okay, so you get piercings, you get more tattoos, and you feel like you have to keep getting more. You have to feel like you keep doing this. You feel like you have to keep wearing makeup. These are forms of appearances that some might depend on, and that's where it gets extreme. Some might exclude from their natural expression, and that's where it gets also very problematic, because, well, those things are supposed to, makeup, tattoos, etc., are supposed to express more of the natural aspects that make up you originally and uniquely. Instead, a lot of people might go overboard with that, and because they get one, they feel like they need to get another, and because of the attention or the feedback that they receive from doing it, they will continue to do it for a greater sense of perhaps acceptance, which might be a form of security for people, right? Sometimes being in a pool of fish, let's say you're one of those fish, being in the pool of fish will help protect you from the, the big shark that wants to eat you. It's much easier to be in a pool of fish because when you're with everyone else, well, it makes it easier to defend against this big aggressor, perhaps, right? So you need to be with other people. And we have this sense of belonging as human beings naturally, and that is often manipulated when we are dealing with politics as well, because we feel like we have to choose sides and feel like we have to be part of the club here and there, and in order to not get attacked and be the outsider, we have to do certain things to fit in, and this all goes also into insecurity. So again, more and more layers. I could just keep going on and on here about society and how it goes, but this is the modernity of the industrial life. This is the consumerism base, at least, because if you were left in nature with little, especially if you have to keep working for things, you're focusing more on the essential aspects of life and not so much all these extra things and the little things that we worry about on a day-to-day basis in the modern life but wouldn't worry about in nature, such as appearance and whatever. Right, so like, oh my gosh, what is this person going to think of me? And you're going crazy. Oh my gosh, I said a certain word somebody doesn't like. This is all modern day problems, and it's often also due to our growth in our brains and our behaviors, and again, technology, social media. There's too many voices in our heads. There's too much clutter going on. And we're unable to keep up with it, where we're not at the synchronization with nature. We're pushing ourselves onto an artificial system that is government, that is social media, etc. Now, social media is not a necessary problem, right? I mean, you choose whether you want to be on it or not, and you choose your contribution, but don't let it control your life. The problem is always when something becomes in control of your life and you become dependent on it for your life. Like some people, I can't live without social media. I can't live without my phone. It's like an extra body part, essentially, that they always have to have with them. They always have to update everybody what they're doing on social media, and they just can't live without it. It's like impossible. Again, this is another evidence, another symptom, if you will, to seeing that somebody has a sense of insecurity. It's the dependence. And that's why the biggest point here to make with this podcast in particular, when talking about insecurity, is control. When you have insecurity, you're seeking security in something, you're losing your freedom. Because if you were truly, truly free, you would not have to be so need of security as such. Okay, now you can protect yourself, but then you'd be free, because you'd be free at mind of saying, yeah, I got everything handled out, I don't need anything, I'm good. I protect my family, I protect my life, it's all I need, I'm content, right? But then the other extreme to that is somebody who doesn't think like that, and needs that security through other people, because they lack it within themselves, and they don't come up to the fact that they should defend themselves, and they're given the option that somebody else could defend them, and so they accept it. They take that external dependence because they have this lack of internal independence. And that's why, we speak of, in natural law, the internal monarchy in control of ourselves, okay? The one ruler of self, the kingdom of self, and the external anarchy, which is supposed to be freedom, because that's what anarchy means, anarchon, no rulers, because you rule yourself, I rule myself, everybody owns themselves. That's an innate principle in nature. So if we stick to the principles, we'll be fine. But when we attach ourselves to what is not actually truthful or right by nature, by morality, by understanding what causes harm, what doesn't, or understanding, what is natural or what is unnatural, what is meant to be and what isn't, essentially, then we understand, well, okay, we can accept, we have more acceptance of who we are, and thus we do not have to keep pushing ourselves onto others and feeling like we need them to, control our lives. And that's what happens, right? If you lack freedom, then you're seeking control by definition of your own life. If you have insecurity, you're seeking by definition security from other people, or you're prone to essentially get hurt, and that's why you seek the security, right? And may not know how to get the security yourself, and thus you feel like you are dependent on external security. But the truth to it, the truth that always remains, is that ultimately you have to be responsible for your own self, no matter how harsh of a reality that is. It has to be understood and it has to be embraced. If it isn't, then essentially you're going to lose your rights, because they belong with you and they don't belong with anybody else. It's a claim of ownership for somebody over you if, all of a sudden they're taking control of everything that's happening in your life. Now, voluntarily, yeah, you could have people helping in your life. There's no problem with people helping you in your life, right? Again, the problem comes when you have dependence on everything from that person, because what would you do without that person, essentially? Now, of course, there's many things, right? Like if you are a child in the world and you seek security through your parents, that is quite natural. And that's why often children or younger ages tend to have a lot more insecurities, especially when they're growing up in the world. However, in a culture that is embracing insecurities or masking it up with many different things because they're introducing all these consumerist-based items. But see, that's where the insecurity gets prolonged and pushed to the extreme, whereas in the natural world, okay, you're growing up as a child, you seek the security through your parents, but then you naturally realize that you have to take security into your own hands, and your parents encourage you into that process because they're there with you, and you learn about life directly. You're out in nature, perhaps, you're hunting animals, you're getting out there, and you realize that, defense is essential, that being with family is essential, protecting them is essential. You learn just naturally all those things for yourself. I'm not saying that you should live in nature and that's going to solve all your problems. I'm using it as an example to show that the artificial world that we live in is creating these things and pushing it to the extremes. Because these things do exist in small amounts, like I say, in everybody in different forms, depending on what is currently the condition. But it's always pushed to the extreme when we lose touch of who we are as ourselves, or lose touch of our nature. Again, that's what I refer to when I say artificial system. That's saying that there's a system that isn't natural, it isn't meant to be, and thus it's going to affect you and your nature, and you're going to feel somewhat detached from yourself because you're in a system that is detached from the system that is nature. So it's only the natural derivative. And I say this for a lot of things, right? I have videos about natural leadership, artificial leadership, natural intelligence, artificial intelligence. These give you a good picture of a similar situation. But insecurity, I think, is a very important topic as well, because you look at quotes, such as I think the one by, it was either Jefferson or Franklin, who said, if you trade freedom for security, you will deserve neither and lose both. See, that it doesn't actually secure you. So that's what I mean by false sense of security. It's not actually protecting you, because only you can truly protect yourself. It's like only you can heal yourself. Only you can truly take charge of your own life. Yeah, you could have other people help you, and they should. They should. Everybody should be there to help each other. But no one's solely responsible for your own life and your own well-being other than you, right? So when it comes to consumerism, because I think that's an important thing to mention, because a lot of people are, held captive to consumerism and may not even know how to escape it, okay? Even if they understand the points that I'm making, it might be hard to say, okay, how do I get out of it? How do I get out of this mess, right? And, you know, there's different situations of mentalities of, well, where I identify as this, I identify as that, give me attention, I'm special, put me on a pedestal, I'm part of this club. Again, different senses of security. You just have to question it. Okay, you have to question it. Once you question it, then things start to come into picture. The thing is, a lot of people are afraid to question it and afraid to face it, so they need support to do that. Okay, so that's one of the biggest things. They need support to do that, and they can't be afraid to question it and confront it, because that's going to be the hardest part, number one, and first and foremost, for any insecurity and attachment to a false form of security, is facing it. It's just like any truth or reality in nature, ultimately, especially if it affects ourselves, because everybody's so about themselves. Once push comes to shove and it affects them, all of a sudden now they, are the ones that worry so much about themselves, and then they will turn on their own word because now it affects them, and so it'll be like they'll find every excuse in the world in order to get away with doing something that they said that they wouldn't do. I mean, the hypocrisy in humanity is amazing, but again, this is all the result due to many different insecurities of being unable to live with the fact that, yes, I do have a different mind, I do think different in today's world, I can embrace that. A lot of people have a hard time doing that. I don't want to be the outcast, I don't want to be that strange conspiracy person. You don't have to be. You surround yourself with the good people, you surround yourself with people who are like-minded, and boom, you have better friends than you probably ever had. You gotta go toward your goals and go toward your attractions. You can't ignore that. That's how you get into false securities, is when you ignore the truth. You get into real security when you confront the truth head on and say, this is what it is, I'm going to stand for it, and the truth wants to stand for me because I stand for it. How could you go wrong with the truth? The truth always rises above. That's the truth, right? Because if you are with a false security, such as government or policemen, for example, which is, is that false sense of security with that system, you're relying on them, and you realize that it's actually not going to protect you within the seconds that things do happen. The police are going to come in minutes, and then all of a sudden the government's in your life, and it's the third party always constantly dragging you down in your court case and making everything more difficult, actually, making everything more political and everything more financial, and all these extra burdens are now all of a sudden now added onto your life. And it's not some simple dispute. Okay, so everything becomes harder when you have these artificial elements entering your life. These aspects that are part of the insecure system. So do you want to call the whole system a false security system? Well, people, it is a belief system that I need somebody to rule over me or to protect me from bad people. It's a belief system, and it's called statism. Okay, that's the belief in an authority legitimately having a moral right over your life and property, which in truth does not, because I said, again, you own yourself. So if you have that whole belief system, and much of humanity has that whole belief system, it is no surprise to me then that much of humanity also feels insecure, because they have a belief system which inherently shows their insecurity and inability to face the truth and live with the direct reality, which is actually anarchy, or actually nature, which is actually just living our lives in peace, free from external, hundreds of people who are ruling over millions of people. This makes no sense. And it's not voluntary, and it's backed by threat of violence. So we're always in fear. And then, we want to embrace such a system, and so they give us democracy in other forms. And then they, have cops, and so they can help protect you, and then you feel like that is necessary, and so that justifies their existence, or it makes it look like as if it's justified in your mind, and so that's what you manifest, because what you think, your actions then replicate upon. So if you think that actually is necessary for society to live on, then you're going to create this insecurity present, and oh my gosh, it's actually securing people in different scenarios, but is it really? Because if you can't own up to the fact that you own yourself, then what is ownership? It isn't. It's ownership over you. It's slavery. Okay, it's not ownership. So get it right. What it is. Cops are not security. These law enforcements are man's law enforcement. All right, and these are different dynamics. I don't expect you to understand right away, and I don't expect anybody to understand right away. And like I said, there's insecurities we all have to face first before getting to this whole mess. Anyways, going back to the point, if you have a lot of consumerist things affecting you, you don't know how to escape that. There's a lot of things that are just basically burdens, perhaps, but that that you should get rid of, but they also make you feel good in different ways. Ooh, a sense of happiness. Okay, and doing something that gives me a little bit of security, right? But you realize that, oh my gosh, I can't live my life without it. Oh no, now you're without some sense of freedom. But then you say, oh, but I'm still happy as long as I have it. Okay, so then you see you have a compromise. You have a trade situation. It's not easy. Okay, because if there might be a time where you can't have it, and what are you going to do? Are you prepared for that? Can you actually not have it? Is the question. How much does this thing control your life? Okay, if it's a big deal, then obviously it's not so great. And I'm not saying you have to live with no insecurities. Okay, it's like living with no consumer goods, no responsibilities. Okay, I'm not saying that. Okay, but what I'm saying is don't lose a sense of insecurity. Don't lose a sense of real security with yourself. Okay, so do not forget that who you are, and don't replace who you are, and don't try to be somebody else. Only you can be you. Because again, if the whole world and the problems that we see in the world is because other people are trying to imitate others and trying to be up to this person and put others on pedestals, and it's all about image in other people's eyes, we're not truly ever living our own life, and we're never truly free or nor happy nor content. We're always looking for something. It's like we're never at the end of the journey where we can sit back and relax. And then we say, okay, well, I can sit back and relax once I have this. Okay, well, do you need it actually for survival? And if your answer is no, then you don't actually need it. Okay, so this is an unnatural thing that you think you need, but you don't. And so is it actually necessary? No. And if it's not actually necessary, then is it actually going to be effective? No. Okay, because what is necessary is the most effective. You need nutrients, you need good health, you need family, living, right? Food. So that is necessary, and that's going to be most effective. Okay, vaccine, mask, makeup, whatever, not going to be effective. Okay, because it's not intended. It's not universal to any degree. It was a man-made thing that was introduced that was never been introduced in the past, but just because it is a present thing to do doesn't mean it's actually good, because just because you can do something does not mean it's good. So you have to realize that everything you do in this life, just because it does exist does not mean it's natural, and just because it does exist does not mean it's good. Okay, so it applies to both there. And realize that. And that's why I say ultimately just question what you're doing. Question if it's actually something you should be doing. Everybody has some different ways of expression, and if it allows you to express more of yourself and your natural being, so be it. But if it hinders and gets in the way, in a sense, and it's overdone, and internally that there's situations that have to be addressed, then certainly you can't keep masking it. Okay, you can't keep masking the situation. You have to get to the root. I put out a video called "Everything in Society is Masked," everything in modern society. So that's telling for this situation. Okay, not just physically, but again mentally. False senses of security. Think about it. Oh my gosh, there's a virus, it's invisible. I need to be secure about it. Do I actually know what it is? I don't know, but it makes me feel safe. Makes me feel safe. Notice people's words when they talk about it. Makes me feel safe knowing I got this. Makes me feel safe knowing I got this. Do they know for a fact? So otherwise, they're basing it in belief. Okay, you believe in something. Okay, so now we're getting into, it could be science, religion, it could be anything, right? You might find insecurities there too. People believing in certain figures for their dependence in their own life, so they can seek more security for themselves to fill the voids that are missing in their own life, right? If they lack a father or a mother figure in their own life, they might go down certain routes because of that. So that's where you have to question for yourself. I can't tell you. This is one of those podcasts I just have to say, well, I can't tell you. You have to figure out for yourself. What is it that you're missing? Why is it that you feel the way that you do? Is it due to something from your childhood, which could be very likely, and the way you were brought up, what you were involved with at the time, the way other people made you feel when you did certain things, But what would make you truly happy, aside from all that, okay? Ask yourself what would make you truly happy, okay? And it's not ever going to truly be image, but rather it's going to be impact, okay? For most people, it's always going to be impact at the end of the day. And just because you have a good image, it may make it seem like you're making an impact, or it might help bridge the fact that you have a good impact. But just because you want to present yourself well does not mean you have to go overboard with it, or do things to try to express that. Being yourself is always going to be the most effective. People will see through, when you try too hard, or when you have struggles. Some people will see it. They will just understand it, because they've lived through it. They've seen other people do it. Maybe they've done it themselves and they realized they went through your same stage. Listen to others and how they feel about you, because they'll find those insecurities within you that you might not see within yourself, or that you're automatically masking. And you have to listen to that, because if you don't, and you suppress it and you just keep suppressing it, you can go your whole life suppressing it and having that sense of insecurity, but you might get in some conflicts here and there with yourself, with others. Oh my gosh, you got to do this. Oh, I got to do that, and I can't live without it. And then it becomes a matter of, well, too much dependence, too much control, lack of freedom, and a lack of self. So be in touch with yourself, and you will not lose your humanity. That's what this is all about. And that's the bigger picture I seek to achieve. If you choose to do something with your body, it's always up to you. Okay? Just always question your decisions. Okay? I'm not saying makeup is unnatural. I'm not saying these things you shouldn't do. I'm saying you should question it as to why you need it. Because you'd be surprised how many people might actually like it when you don't do those things. And you be different from the people who are insecure around you. And when you truly just express yourself, and when you embrace that, okay? Now you don't have to make a show of that either, right? It's not about making a show. It's about simply being. Live the truth, because the truth simply is. So you simply be. What more do you have to be? Why do you have to be somebody else? Why do you have to look up to this image? Again, where were those thoughts originally coming into your mind? Did that come from a natural source? Nature is the answer. Thank you. Corey and Angela.